All for their grubby little money-making wars for a handful of trillionaires. They're 1% of 1%. They are such a small minority, and their power is illusionary, folks. Their power is only there as long as we give it to them. We give them power, and we can take that power back at the click of our fingers. We can take that power back so quickly. We've just got to stand up. All of us stand up and say, enough, as Julian did. Julian is leading us. Julian is teaching us, is showing the way, is giving us courage. We need to listen to this man and not listen to the false news about him, the fake news, all this rubbish that's been propagated by the media. The media, who are about to be controlled forever, won't stand up and defend themselves. They're so interested in their pay packet, you know, in the gravy train that they sit on. That's all they, absolutely, that is all they care about. They don't see beyond that. Whether it's ignorance, stupidity, what it is, I don't know, but they're prepared to give up truth, justice, freedom, democracy.
Julian Assange, and the fact that he is imprisoned in Belmarsh simply for being a journalist. He's an acclaimed Australian. Another very good Australian journalist from the ABC, Mr. Dan Oakes, will not be prosecuted over the Afghan files leak. Now, this has been celebrated. Yes, of course it has been celebrated. But I just wanted to do a little bit of a tricky thing and read the same news article as if it were about Assange. So that's what I'm going to do. Federal police have confirmed that journalist Julian Assange will not be prosecuted over the reporting on alleged war crimes carried out by Australian special forces in Afghanistan. The Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions said there was a reasonable chance of securing a conviction against Mr. Assange over the leaked classified documents that he used to form the basis of his reporting. But the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions said there was no public interest in pursuing a prosecution. no public interest in pursuing a prosecution of Mr. Assange. In a statement, the Australian Federal Police said he had referred a brief to the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions outlining potential criminal charges. And this is the response. In determining whether the matter should be prosecuted, the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions considered a range of public interest factors, including the role of public interest journalism in Australian democracy. So the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions, in this case, determined that the public interest does not require a prosecution. As a result of this, the Australian Federal Police determined to finalize its investigation. And I read this in this manner because it does refer to Mr. Oakes, another great Australian journalist, but it equally applies to Mr. Assange. Great Australian journalist, great publisher, who did not disclose secrets. He disclosed crimes committed by the US and other governments in other countries, crimes that basically perpetuated an ongoing war in the Middle East, war in Afghanistan, war in so many countries. Why? Because of greed. And that's Mr. Assange. He's won hundreds of awards, maybe dozens of awards, I should say dozens of awards all over the world, from prestigious journalist organizations, human rights organizations, parliamentarians overseas, and in Australia as well. The Weekly Award, the Peace Award as well in Australia. And so the fact that the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions says that we have a public interest in permitting journalists to disclose matters that attain to our democracy, and the fact that our governments are doing wrong things in our names, the fact that they will not prosecute Mr. Dan Oakes means that Mr. Julian Assange had never been able, or should never have been able to be prosecuted overseas, particularly because he's not an American. He wasn't in the US when these alleged events took place. He was doing a strictly journalistic work, publishing information for the public interest. And because of that, we say that the same treatment that has been given to Mr. Dan Oakes should have been given to our Julian Assange. He should have been left free to do his work, to question every time a government does something wrong, particularly if they commit war crimes. We want Mr. Julian Assange to be free and to continue to maintain our democracy and our right to know, our right to be informed, our right to question our governments for what they do behind our backs. So we congratulate Mr. Oakes, but we also want the same statements to come from our governments and to come from other journalists about Julian Assange. Thank you.
Fight for just affairs on Sydney Town Hall stairs. Here to make a stand. We are all Assange. We dispute the lies. We are on the rise, making truth expand. We are all Assange. Here to save his life. Here to end the strife. We distrust the plan. We are all Assange. He always speaks the truth. Knowledge backed with proof. Facts are in demand. We are all Assange. We're going to have a mock court of a court that is a mockery of justice. And in doing so, we're hoping that this double negative will produce a positive.
Oh God, I've got very important.
Okay. I'll be doing this.
I've got to get this action.
Hey, Billy.
You've just got to ad-lib it, Billy.
Are we ready, lights? Yeah. We have to wait on the director to give us action.
Action.
All rise! I am Judge Berater. We are here again for yet another day of the extradition hearing of Mr. Julian Paul Assange. Some people have been wondering why only 2 people have been permitted into the public gallery when 5 places were set aside. Well, I can put everyone's mind to rest. 3 of the 5 places here have been reserved for members of the Australian High Commission. They wisely decided not to embarrass themselves by attending. As everyone knows, Mr. Assange has been a source of embarrassment for many important people. We will now listen to the defence, who will read out another witness statement, this time from an employee of UC Global, the security company contracted to provide security services to the Ecuadorian government at their London embassy while Mr. Assange was in residence. I'll hand over now to the defence.
Thank you, Your Honour. Around July 2016, when UC Global was providing security services to the government of Ecuador in London, David Morales, the manager, traveled to a security fair in Las Vegas. On this trip, Morales showcased UC Global as the company that was responsible for the security of the embassy. After this initial trip, UC Global obtained a flashy contract personally managed by Morales with the company Las Vegas Sands, owned by tycoon Sheldon Adelson, a supporter of Trump. After returning from one of those trips to the US, Morales gathered his workers and told them, "We have moved up, and from now on, we will be playing in the big league." He said, "We have switched over to the dark side," referring to cooperating with US authorities. And as a result of that cooperation, the Americans will get us contracts all over the world. I learned that Mr. Morales had entered into illegal agreements with US authorities to supply them with sensitive information about Mr. Assange and Mr. Rafael Correa. As part of this contract, the company wrote reports on the basis of Ecuador's intelligence agency on a monthly basis. But as a result of this parallel agreement, with the US authorities, Morales said to us that the reports would be sent to the dark side. In order to do this, Morales began making regular trips to the United States. From 2017, Your Honor, with the victory of Donald Trump, I realized that Morales' trips to see the American friends began to escalate. More specifically, around June or July 2017, Morales began to develop a sophisticated information collection system inside the embassy. He asked the employees who were physically inside the embassy to intensify and deepen their information collection about Mr. Assange. They were also in charge of internal and external cameras of the embassy, and the new interior cameras recorded sound. Packages of information were configured so that Morales would personally bring those documents to the American authorities with details and intrusion on the privacy of Mr. Assange, his lawyers, doctors, and other visitors. Morales showed a real obsession in relation to monitoring and recording the lawyers who met with Mr. Assange, because the American friends were requesting it. In my view, Your Honor, Morales betrayed both the terms of the contract and the trust that had been given to him by the government of Ecuador by systematically handing over information to US intelligence agencies. That information related to security of the embassy and also in relation to Mr. Assange and Mr. Correa. So I came to realize that Mr. David Morales had decided to sell all of the information to the enemy, to the United States. And that's the reason I put an end to my professional relationship with him, Your Honor.
Thank you. I must say, Mr. David Morales sounds to be a very likable fellow. I completely understand how he fell in with our American friends. We should all feel friendly towards American intelligence. Mr. Assange would do well to learn from Mr. Morales. The court will now adjourn.
All rise. The court is now adjourned. We've got a message for ScoMo.
Come down.
We have a message here for ScoMo. ScoMo, call up Boris. 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 ScoMo, call up Boris.
Free!
Julian Assange!
Free!
Julian Assange!
Free!
Julian Assange!
Our mate, Julian Assange!
Free Assange.
This is a court which is de facto sentencing someone to death.
I know.
Very likely.
As one of the former governors of ADX Colorado said, it's worse than a death sentence because it's torture until you die. And you know, the longer you survive, the worse it is. So you're better off, as they pointed out in court, is committing suicide early on in your sentence to relieve the agony of your sentence. No, it's
Have to get him out.